Welcome, everybody. We're going to just get started here in about 15 or 20 seconds as everyone is joining the webinar. But thank you all for being here this evening. As you are getting set up for the webinar, feel free to go ahead and scan this QR code, which is going to take you to our program link webpage. If you have not already taken a look at your individual students' program information, this is a great place to reference exact dates, which can be found on the financial aid budget, other information about financial aid, and many more resources. Okay, we're going to go ahead and dive in here. So who's who, just so you know who is leading this webinar and who are always available for any questions that you may have. Hopefully this session will address the questions that you do have, but we are certainly here should you have any follow-up questions. So we have our director, Whitney Longnecker, joining us this evening, as well as our assistant director, Adriana Ward. And then myself here, I'm the administrator of our TTU Center in Sevilla, which basically means that I'm the go-to person for faculty, students, and many of your parent questions that I've also answered throughout the last couple of semesters. So I'm really the point of contact and the liaison between all of our students and professors here in Lubbock and the TTU Center in Sevilla. So I've had the privilege of meeting the majority of your students. I think almost every single student has been able to come to one of our in-person events, which is wonderful. We most recently had an event called Seville Night, and I think every single student was in attendance, but one maybe. So that was such an excellent turnout, and I hope that they left feeling very empowered with lots of great information, very informed about what to expect with their programs abroad. But nonetheless, I will be in Sevilla. I leave in a few days, actually. So I will be there in Spain. And you can remind your students of that if they maybe getting started out the first few days, don't really recognize anybody in the Seville Center. I am there floating around, and I'm happy to be their point of contact upon arriving and throughout the semester as well. Okay, so feel free to take, screenshots, pictures of any of this information. We have the chat box, which is readily available and live. Whitney and Adriana will be answering questions there in real time. So if there's something that we are discussing that's not exactly clear, please send that question on. If you just have a general question, it may be best to wait until we get to that specific topic to see if I already answer your question in advance. But nonetheless, that chat is available to you. Okay, so at this point, students have mostly purchased their flights, which is wonderful. But I do want to just remind you that half of the programs end in Madrid and half of the programs end in Sevilla. So the first thing that you need to know from your student is, hey, does your program end in Madrid or in Seville? That information is definitely going to be on the program webpage. The faculty know it. They've also been given a calendar that will specify, when they're leaving and where they'll be flying out of. But you can see here, if the program is ending in Madrid, then the best option is for you to purchase that round trip flight to Madrid and back. Now you can fly any flight you want, any company, the students can come in early. You have a lot of flexibility because that responsibility is completely on the student. But the majority of students do fly American Airlines from Dallas directly to Madrid. And that way they have other travel buddies and they typically go together to the train station. And some will have purchased that train ticket in advance, which is ideal, but others will wait until they arrive at the train station, which typically is okay as well. There are many trains that go to Seville during the busy summer months, but nonetheless, I have information down here in a second about how to find that that train ticket ahead of time and how to purchase that. But it is very easy to take the fast speed train to Sevilla, very safe. It is a very comfortable and beautiful introduction to what southern Spain really has to offer. And that is often the more affordable option versus flying directly into Seville from Madrid on a one-way ticket. So that is recommended. But you can visit renfe.es, which is short for España, ES, and that's going to be the best way to purchase a train ticket. Now, please note, you can change it to English in the top right of the website, but you'd want to purchase a one-way ticket only from Madrid to Seville, because we will take your students to Madrid at the end of the program. So we provide that train or the bus, the hotel, entrance tickets to the museums, to the Royal Palace, whatever it is that your program is trying to encompass during that excursion. We will already have all of that completed and reserved for your students. So no need to make an additional train ticket, hotel reservation, nothing like that. I have received a few questions so far from parents asking specific information of where students are going to be staying in Madrid. And typically they stay every year. We stay in one of two hotels that are side by side. It's in the Plaza de España area or around the corner down Calle Gran Via. And it's called the Espa Hotel. However, we will not have like the final roster of which students are staying in which hotel until the hotel basically provides that information to us later in the summer months. So your student will be in one or the other locations that are again side by side. But if your student is planning to stay an extra day or 2 days in Seville, they cannot necessarily get that information right now, but probably halfway through their program, we will have those lists confirmed from the hotel, and they're more than welcome to ask us which hotel they'll be at if they need to extend their stay there in Madrid and prefer to choose that hotel. Now, if your program is ending in Sevilla, it's best to purchase a round trip flight to Sevilla and all the way back. So you go to Madrid and you have a connecting flight to Seville, and you do the same thing going back. If that's not an affordable option, then the first option works for you as well. You can fly into Madrid, take the train down to Sevilla, and arrive in time for orientation. Now, please note, if a return flight is leaving from Madrid and your program ends in Sevilla, a lot of those flights leave between like 11, 12, 1 o'clock, and it is almost impossible to get from Seville on the train to Madrid on the day that the flight will actually depart. And without them just being very, very stressed out. The trains don't leave super early from Seville, and you need truly at minimum 3 to 3.5 hours in the Madrid airport. Even myself, a very seasoned traveler in and out of Spain, I would never not go 3 hours early, just because it's a very large airport. And it takes a very long time to get specifically to the American Airlines terminal, which is separated from the entire airport. So because of this, if your student is planning to fly out on the day that the program ends and their flight leaves from Madrid at like 1 p.m., they will actually need to travel with, probably somebody else in the program, because it is a common thing to get that 1 p.m. flight out of Spain. They'll want to travel to Madrid the night prior and stay together in a hotel that is close to the airport. Students can stay anywhere that they want, but it's very convenient to just go out towards the airport, so they have less than a 5 to 10 minute drive to get them actually to the airport the following morning and not be so rushed. Regarding packing, so summer packing lists and a step-by-step transportation instruction sheet were distributed at Seville night. So that has already been, given to your students. Hopefully they are taking that to heart. There's a lot of good information on the front and on the back of those flyers, just tips and tricks. So if you want to check in with your student, make sure that they are aware of that. That would be a good thing. One piece of information that I'll share with you that's really helpful from those flyers is on the back of the packing list. I have an example of the luggage tag. And it's very important that students put the TTU Center in Sevilla address, which is provided on the back of that luggage tag. It's like a picture with it all filled out for them. Because there's a good chance that someone's luggage is going to be delayed, and we want it to come to Sevilla. We want it to come to the center as soon as possible and not to return back to the United States. So please check in with your students and remind them of that very important information. Okay, so all students will arrive in Sevilla on their own. They get all the way to Sevilla by themselves. And then we will meet them at the Hotel Fernando Tercero. So this is a very widely known hotel in the region. It's a beautiful hotel. These are real photos. So your students who are arriving early, the pool is much bigger than this tiny little corner that it's showing you. It's a full-size pool. And so your students are more than welcome to check in. Usually around 2 or 3 o'clock is the earliest that students can check in. And then they can just rest upstairs or in their rooms or go on a short walk. It is completely up to them. Summer programs truly begin at 7 p.m. That evening. So we will be meeting them in the lobby at that time to begin the walking tour of the cathedral and all the areas that are very close there to where the hotel is. This really is in the heart of Sevilla. If you see in this bottom picture, there's a tower behind the pool on the right there. That's the cathedral. It's very, very close. And this is really the main destination in Sevilla. So we've got a great location, and we'll get started on all of that at 7 o'clock. So students will receive a detailed itinerary for orientation, specifically like what is happening, from what time to what time. Typically about 1 week before the program start date. And that will be sent by the staff member at the TTU Center in Sevilla who's in charge of that particular program. So it'll come to their TTU email. And that's going to just allow them to kind of know what to expect from the hour-to-hour perspective of orientation. Now, as a reminder, the cost is included in the price of this program for orientation. So please do not schedule a hotel stay for that first night of the program. There are several students who have chosen to come in early to Sevilla, which is completely fine. And I know that some of them have actually made reservations at the hotel itself that we're going to be staying in, the Fernando. So what my recommendation is to students, and you can definitely help me out and share this information with your students if this applies to you, is to send an email or send a message through the booking platform that you used for the hotel, and let them know that they are part of the TTU group, the Texas Tech group, and give them their arrival date for the true program. We've got many programs coming in and out. So if they just say, oh, I'm part of the Texas Tech group, that might be, a little bit confusing. They may need more information. But that would be really helpful for your student, because the goal there is for them to maybe not have to switch rooms. And if the room that they booked is pretty similar to the room that we use for orientation, then maybe they wouldn't have to switch rooms. I know that doesn't apply to everybody, but it can sure save the hassle of having to repack and unpack and all of that for students, within the first couple of days. Now, regarding how students get from point A to point B, so they're landing at the airport in Madrid, how do they get to the train station? And then when they get to the train station, how do they get to the hotel or for orientation? They have a couple of options, all of which have been shared in detail, not only at Seville Night, but also the pages that we've given them that have like the detailed step instructions. My recommendation is that if they have a travel buddy, that they split the cost for a taxi. It's going to be, completely safe. It's going to be above ground, so they get to see a glimpse, of Madrid and of Seville upon first arriving. It is a set price, and the government controls the taxi organizations. So they're all the same, and it's going to be very, very accessible to students. And it's also one of the fastest options to get from point A to point B in both Madrid and in Sevilla. Now I have explained to them that most of the time they do take credit cards, but sometimes they do not take credit cards. And for that reason, they'll need a little bit of cash, a little bit of spending money. And we'll talk about money and phones here in just a few slides. But in addition to taxis, there are also buses that go from the airport in Madrid directly to the train station in Madrid. There's only one main train station, and that is going to be a much more affordable option, but it does take a little bit longer. And if your student has never traveled alone, or if they're packing some heavy luggage with them, it may just be more ideal to split the cost with another student if possible, and take that taxi. Metro options are like the underground metro is also another option. It's about 5 to 7 euros. But there are a couple of connections, and there's quite a bit of walking. There's escalators involved, and that can be just really overwhelming to students, even if they've traveled before to large European cities. But it is certainly an option. So if your student is especially well traveled, then one of those two options may be a better idea for them. So on day one of orientation, students will receive what we call their arrival packet. And inside that arrival packet, we will have their personalized insurance cards. We will have their bus pass that we have preloaded money that should really last them throughout the entire time that they're there. We also have like little phrases and little cards for like, quick reference for Spanish when they're speaking with their host mom the first few days. And then we also have a card inside with emergency information that they can just keep in their wallet while they are in Spain. So all of that will be provided to them within like the first 15 minutes of orientation, so that they can definitely have all of that very useful information. After that, we do cover, typically it's about 2 to 3 hours of on-site orientation content. And during that time, we will discuss, how to greet your host family and really what that experience is going to be like the following morning, or, in a couple of days when they meet their host family. We'll talk about safety and security and drinking culture and, the different times of day that they may be having a meal. We're going to talk about how excursions really work and what to expect as far as the time that you need to be at places and where we're going to be leaving. We give them a general overview of all of those little details during the orientation itself. We also share information to them on how they can get a phone SIM card if they get sick, what that looks like. And I'm going to dive into that here in a minute as well. But we really cover everything that we can during that 2 to 3 hours. And then right before, let's say, those excursions happen, they receive follow-up email just with the reminder of when we're leaving, what time we're leaving, and what the itinerary for that excursion is going to entail.
Lana, we have a couple of questions that have come in about these kind of logistical matters. And so I thought maybe we could chime in and ask you to answer those while we're still on the topic. So one of the questions that we received was, can students ship luggage to the arrival hotel?
That is not ideal, because especially if your luggage is coming from the United States, there is a very, very good chance that it will be stuck in customs, and that your student will have to pay quite a heavy fee to get that out of customs. So it is definitely not recommended whatsoever. I'll talk a little bit more about what can be shipped to the center, but luggage ahead of time is not a good idea. Also, let's say your student is coming in, 3 or 4 days early, and they're just coming to Seville, and then they're going to go somewhere else, in Spain or in Europe. They're welcome to drop their luggage at the TTU Center in Sevilla. If we are there, which we will be there during normal business hours. But other than that, I would definitely recommend that the luggage stays with the student at all time during the travel process.
And like Lana mentioned, the students have copies of those packing lists. So if you're worried about space or what should take, should not take, and that's maybe leading to the question about shipping items, that packing list might be helpful to make sure you're on the right track for what to bring. Another question that we had, so you talked about getting from Madrid to Sevilla via the train or taxi, all of this kind of thing. But how about on the back side of the program? So a question that we have is, will the students be responsible to get themselves to the airport at the end of the program, regardless if they're ending in Madrid or Seville?
And the answer to that is yes. So the programs end at the hotel the morning of the program. So there are no program responsibilities for the students on that day. So let's say your student's program ends on June 30th. They will not be meeting the morning of June 30th. They just check out of their hotel in time to get to the airport with plenty of time to fly out that particular day. It's the exact same thing if the program ends in Seville. And it ends on June 30th, there will be no activities that morning, no requirements whatsoever. That time will be spent with students just telling their host families goodbye. It'll probably be very tearful, but also very joyful. And they will then take themselves to either the train station or directly to the airport. Now, either of those locations, it is very easy to have a taxi called. The host mom will call a taxi. Uber, we'll talk about Uber here in a second. It is very accessible to use Uber from in town to the airports, not really vice versa, but I'll dive into that in a minute. So there are lots of options there, and the hotel will call a taxi, but it's conveniently right in front of a taxi stand. So there's almost always a line of taxis, that are available. But the hotel is wonderful to call those taxis, even if they're back to back to back. So that should be easy to arrange for them.
Perfect, thank you. Another question with regard to travel, and then we'll turn it back over to you to continue on with the slides. But for this question, how long would you allow for between when a plane arrives in the Madrid airport to when a student should plan to leave on the train to go to Sevilla? And then can you also talk about the train station in Sevilla that they should be booking their ticket to, and perhaps the name of it?
Yes, so that information is coming up here in just a second. But the let me see what's the question. Oh, how long? Okay, so I've instructed students that they should allow honestly 4 hours. Because customs, the last couple of times I have flown into Spain, have truly taken the full 2 hours to get in. Now, granted, that was still like up until last year, and there was still some delays due to COVID, but not really. There's just a lot of people coming into Spain. And so I would expect the customs to take 2 full hours. And then students need to allow an entire hour to travel from the train station, from the airport to the train station. Most of these flights are coming in early in the morning, 9 o'clock. That is like peak rush hour time in Sevilla. So, I mean, in Madrid and everywhere in Spain, like 9 a.m. it's going to be busy on the roads. So because of that, they need to allow an entire hour to get from the airport in Madrid to the train station. And that's already 3 hours. And they need a little bit more time to get settled and then find their train, get on in time, all of that. So I would really say 4 hours. It may be kind of on the conservative side, but I will tell you that there is a complete jungle that is in the bottom floor of the train station. There are hundreds of turtles, loads of different variations of plants that are there. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting and a great place for students to just gather and kind of relax before they get on their train. So it's going to be better for them to get there early and have a later train. And because the program does not start until 7 p.m., they have plenty of time to allow those 4 hours. Whitney, I don't know if you want to address any more or just keep going.
Let's keep rolling, and then we'll take more questions as they come in.
Great. Okay, billing and financial aid. So I I do see we're kind of like changing topics completely here. We will talk more about how students get back to Madrid. And if we don't have time to talk about that, we can still answer those questions here in a second. Okay, so program deposits, which typically are about $750 per program. The exact amount of that program deposit can be found on your financial aid budget. But the deposits and the $350 non-refundable education abroad fee have been placed on your student's e-bill. And student businesses actually set those due dates. So SBS, if you hear your students or if you've contacted SBS, they are the ones who set those due dates. Probably most of you have already paid them, or you already are aware that these are, going to be due here pretty soon. But please note that fees can be paid all at once, or they can be put on a payment plan, but that's via SBS. So we do not get involved with the payment plan options, but it is the same as your normal semester or your normal summer term. It'll be available there on the e-bill. And if you have questions about that payment plan or how much time that's going to buy you to pay off what the bill includes, you'd want to direct those specific questions to the Student Business Services office. Now, the remaining program fees have been sent for processing by our office, and they will be on your student's e-bill no later than May 20th. Now, sometimes they're more rolling, I guess you could say. So some of them may pop up by like May 15th, or maybe even a couple days sooner than that. So I would certainly remind your students to be checking in the next couple of weeks to be looking for when those e-bills are going to be updated. And financial aid contact information has been provided to your students throughout this entire process. Many of them, if not all of them, have been in contact with financial aid, which is great. If you do not know where to find the financial aid budget, your students' faculty definitely have copies of this. Your students have received digital copies of this, but it is also available typically in 2 different formats that are on your program's webpage. Kind of up towards the top on the left, you'll see highlighted in red a link that will include the budget sheets, and you can simply select the term that your student is planning to go abroad, and that's where you can get that detailed information. Okay, let's transition here to talk about host family expectations. So I am very aware, of students being a little bit hesitant about transitioning back to living with a host family or just a family in general after they've had, so much freedom in university. But I can honestly say that this is one of the true highlights of choosing to study at the TTU Center in Sevilla. I was a student through 2 different programs here at Texas Tech during undergraduate, and I was able to go to Sevilla both times, live with the same host family, and it's very hard to explain how much that experience heightened my overall time while in Sevilla. And we certainly aim for the exact same experience for all of our students. So with that, please know that us, selecting host families, it's a very rigorous process. We do not post these openings on Craigslist, nothing like that. In fact, we very rarely have openings because most of our host families have been with us for many years, and they come with very thorough personal references if we do have a new host family who's joining us. But they are very carefully vetted. And as I said, many have been partnering with the TTU Center in Sevilla for many, many years. My host mom is celebrating her 18th year with Texas Tech. So it's not just like 2 or 3 years. They are substantial partnerships that we have with most of our host families. But we still, even with our most seasoned host families, we require all of our students to complete host family surveys regarding their living situations, what they loved, what they didn't love, what the hardest thing was for them to, acclimate to, what advice they would share with other students. But we also want to know, how they slept, how they're eating. All of these these details because we take it very seriously, and we want this to be a very enriching part of the process for our students. Let's say a student has a concern involving maybe their living situation or their roommate, something like this. They should speak directly with us. And by us, I mean whoever their point of contact is that they will be given during orientation, or they can always speak to the director or to the assistant director, and we will look into that immediately to see what's going on, see if there's some miscommunication, or if for some reason that particular placement isn't the best for your student. So there is some wiggle room there if something goes, a little bit against expectations of the student. I will tell you that these types of concerns are incredibly rare, so I wouldn't expect you to feel like, oh goodness, hopefully that's not going to be my student, my kid. Those instances are very, very rare. Students will be notified on day one of orientation who their host family is and who their roommates will be. Now, during the application process, all students completed what is called the housing questionnaire. And this was an opportunity for students who knew other students that were traveling with this program, or if they knew another student who had been to Sevilla and they just loved their host mom so much, we allowed this platform for them to identify who, if any, other student they want to live with, and who host family maybe that they want to live with. I would say less than like 10% of students really know either of those things, and that's completely fine. We spend a lot of time and energy and, quite frankly, love putting in which students are going to be the most compatible with each other and which host family they're going to be a great fit with, based on maybe location or based on preferences of having pets or small children in the home or no children in the home, or if they have any special dietary restrictions. All of those little pieces of information truly do play a role in where your student is going to be living. But I can guarantee that your student will be living with another student of the same gender in the same program that they are in. So let's say your student is doing Spanish at the 2000 level. They're going to be with another student that's not only from tech, not only from Spanish, but also in the same course as them, so that their schedules are completely identical and they have a partner there to practice Spanish with and to review homework and study and those types of things. So it's not going to be randomized in any way. Now, host families will pick up students from the hotel, the orientation hotel, where that takes place. Typically, they'll come the following morning. Now, most programs have a one-day orientation. There are a couple of our new programs that are there for 2 days during orientation, which means the host mom would then come on the third day. And regardless of if your student has a 1 day or a 2 day or a 3 day orientation, host families will come in person, and they have about an hour window to trickle in a few at a time, and they meet and greet the students. We are there with them. We facilitate that introduction with the student and the host family, which is such a memorable experience for your students. I promise we'll never forget that. It's a really, really, exciting time for them. But we will also confirm right there on the spot if a student has any type of food allergy in general, any type of sensitivity, anything like that. We remind the host family and we confirm with the student that what they put on their questionnaire is complete, and that they didn't forget to say, oh yeah, I am allergic to peanuts, but I'm also allergic to all nuts. We use that time to just double check before they go with host families that what they've put on that questionnaire is in fact true and complete. Just to allow one last chance. And then, of course, if there's any questions after that, we can still, have communication, have conversations with the host family regarding any of those details. So what is the first day with the host family really going to be like? And really, it's going to vary. It's going to vary on what the host family's life is like, if they work, if this is really the only thing they do, if they are having other family come in on day one to meet your student. It just kind of depends on the individual situation of that host family. But for the most part, host families will come and pick up the students from between 9 and 10 in the morning. They'll typically take a taxi because the luggage is not ideal to haul across cobblestone. So they will all go together in the taxi to the host family. They will see their rooms. Most of the time, like, they are going to be assigned like, a room, and they can decide between themselves, the two roommates, who's going to get what bed or, whatever. In some cases, there are 3 students that stay in a host family's house, and often there may be 2 students in one room and 1 student on the other room, and that is something that the students will just figure out between themselves, who's going to stay where, who's going to sleep where, basically. And then they'll use that time to unpack, kind of get settled, tour the house a little bit, and then they'll get ready for lunch. So lunch is going to be later in the afternoon. And then typically in the evening, host families will either walk the students to the TTU Center in Sevilla to show them how exactly to get there. Or if your student already has a SIM card and they're like, oh, thank you, that is so sweet, but I'm okay, then they will find themselves to the TTU Center in Sevilla. We always recommend they come and do that the night before classes begin, just so they're not frazzled the morning their first class begins. A couple of our programs do actually start class on that very first day. So they'll have lunch, a quick siesta, and then they'll go on to class. But if that is the case for your student, your faculty or their faculty has made that very clear to them that the first day of class is going to be the day that they go to their host family's house. But nonetheless, all students should still have a wonderful first meal in their host family's home. They'll have a almost mandatory siesta. They'll be very tired and jet lagged at that time of day. And then they'll have the rest of the evening free. And most classes will begin the following morning. So I'm sure that your students have already shared this with you, but some of the expectations that you can count on from these host families are: 1, your student will have their own set of keys. They're going to be treated like an adult. They can come, they can go as they please. There are no curfews. The host family is definitely there to provide support, a safe place to land, and be there to check in with your student, see how they're doing throughout the time of their program. If your student is coming in at 5 a.m. on a Tuesday and it's a school night, your host mom probably is going to check in with the student and see, hey, like, what are you doing on a Tuesday night at 5 in the morning? But for the most part, like, they are going to stay out of it as much as possible, but they really rely on student engagement. So some students are going to connect immediately. They're just going to, be practicing Spanish or be translating with their host families, and that's wonderful. Other students are going to be just hi and, kind of the minimum conversation, because most of their time is going to be spent out in the city, and that's fine as well. There are no expectations of the student as far as how much time they have to spend at home. But there is an expectation of mutual respect. And we do tell students, if you're going to come in late, keep up with your keys. Do not break things as you're coming into the hotel or into your host family's house. Just be very kind and respectful as you would, in your own home or in your family's home, as well. They do provide 3 meals a day, which is yummy. Breakfast is not a warm breakfast as we're more accustomed to here in the United States, but they will definitely be offered like a little cookie, toast, cereal, coffee, tea, whatever they, kind of feel like having. And they'll be provided a full 3-course meal every day before siesta. And then they'll also have dinner. Dinner is usually a lighter affair because it's so late in the evening. But it is still, provided to the students, and still a really great way to end the day. They also take care of laundry. Now, this is typically usually once a week. Sometimes host families, might do like lights one day and darks the other day kind of thing. But each host family will let the student know that on day one and kind of walk them through the process of how laundry is going to work. They do not have dryers, so they will air line dry everything, and then they will iron everything, and then they bring it to your student the following day in this beautiful prepared pile of clothes, and they are on their way. Now, if your student is planning to go on a big excursion or go to Paris for the weekend or whatever their plans look like that weekend, the host mom will be checking in with them to say, hey, are you going somewhere this weekend? Do you need a certain outfit for that trip that you have planned, so that they can be as prepared as possible. Okay, so what does a day really look like? So now you know what the first couple of days look like, but what about the other 5 weeks worth? And it really depends on your student's class time. Classes are offered throughout the day from like 9 until 9, so all day long. We do our best to avoid the siesta hour because lunch and siesta is quite sacred in Sevilla. Some classes will come in towards the end of siesta time, so they'll have lunch a little bit earlier. But for the most part, as I said earlier, students will have breakfast regardless of class time, between 8 or 9 or 8 to 10, depending on how that works with your family. And then Spain has what is called merienda, which is kind of like a second breakfast. And the entire country has a break in the morning, and the time varies. So it could be 10, 10:30, all the way to even 11:30 or 12. And let's say your students are in class throughout the morning, they will have a break between their classes to go and have merienda, because the faculty will go and have merienda, so will the staff. So it is just part of the culture there. And a lot of students find that they don't really crave the, just cereal in the morning. They prefer to wait for the merienda, which is at their own expense, but you can get like a small sandwich for breakfast, like a breakfast type of sandwich, and a coffee for less than like $1.50, $2. Very, very affordable. So a lot of students will choose that route over the typical breakfast because the merienda is typically warm, and that's just more common to what we're used to as Americans. Then the typical lunchtime is really 2 to 4, and then siesta extends to like 5 p.m. So it just depends, like I said earlier, what time they're coming and going for class, but they can expect to eat, during this time, which is why it's completely appropriate to have merienda at like 11 o'clock, because you're not going to have lunch maybe till 3 o'clock. So it kind of holds you over until that time of day. They have lots of free time. So basically any time except for class time and meal times is free time. And so students should expect to have, at least like 6 to 7 hours a day to do whatever they want. It's very common for students to go into the city and study together versus going to like each other's host families. That's not really super common, but to get out and about in the city, go to a cafe, coffee shop, that is very, very common. There is so much to see. So please encourage your students to get out and about as much as they can to just take full advantage of all that Sevilla has to offer. And it also depends on excursion schedules. So a lot of excursions fall on the weekend, but every single program has industry visits during the week. They have maybe guest speakers during the week. They may go to a bullfight or to a flamenco show or to hear a concert. There's going to be a lot of activities that happen during the day as well. We have a law program that's going, and they will be going to the actual courthouse during business hours. We have a PR program. They're going to be traveling to They're going to be traveling to a winery and to the beach a few times because that's exactly what they're studying. And those fall on weekdays. So the excursions could absolutely be during the week. They probably will be. And they usually take the place of traditional class. So not always, it kind of depends on the faculty. But if a program is going on a day trip somewhere on a random Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, that is class time. They don't have to come back and make that up. The country is their classroom on those days. Now, how do students kind of get to and from? How do they get from their host family to the center when they go out to dinner together with their friends? How do they get back? Everywhere that they need to go, students can walk and it be completely safe. I have been going to Sevilla and all over Spain since I was 20 and first went abroad through this exact program. And I can honestly say that I've never felt unsafe in Sevilla, even late at night. That being said, like I'm, wise, and I was wise as a student that if, I was by myself and it was more than like a 5 to 10 minute walk, I probably took a taxi because it was like $5 and I was ready to get home and go to sleep kind of thing. But it is safe. And I hope that you soon hear from your students just how safe they all feel. Seville is a large city, but it also has a very small town feel just because Texas Tech has a great presence there and they get to meet so many other students and feel connected to their host family that they yes, are abroad, but they also have this great level of comfort if they need it. But as I said much earlier, during the orientation day one, they'll receive that welcome packet, and that will include bus passes for every single student. Now, if your student lives outside of a 25 to 30-minute walking radius, there aren't a lot of students in that category, but some students will, and they can still walk. But if it takes more than 25 minutes to walk, then we will give them 2 bus passes so that they can easily get to and from the buses. The reason that we still have those families that are a little bit further out is because those are some of our most rock star families that have been with us for a very, very long time, even since our campus was in another area of Seville. And so they all live very close to the bus stop so that students are not having to like walk 20 minutes just to get on a 20-minute bus ride. It's not like that. It's very accessible. So I did mention earlier about Uber. Uber is completely accessible in most of Europe, but definitely in Seville. It is, maybe the most natural thing that students will want to do, especially if they don't have any more cash, left over, or if they just, want to ensure that a taxi is coming straight to their host family's house. That is completely fine, and then they are safe. It is used just like Uber is done here. They are all black cars, which seems really fancy. But anyway, that's irrelevant. But it can definitely be used all over the city. There's also a local app that we will tell students about in Sevilla that basically is Uber, but for taxis. And that is typically cheaper than an Uber. So that might be another option that students want to do. Taxis are completely safe. As I said earlier, the government controls them and they use meters always. I've never been in a taxi that is like sketchy in Sevilla. They are very kind and they get you from point A to point B and they're clean. It'll be a perfect option for your student. Now let's backtrack for a second here to Uber. I have here not on arrival day, and that is very important. I've told students this, but this is a great thing for you to remind your students that they do not need to plan to take an Uber from the airport to the train station or from the train station to the hotel, because Ubers are not allowed like very close to the exit gates for passengers. And that is because the taxis have such a strong presence, and because they are supported by the local government, taxis will be the only thing that students really see. Now you can order an Uber later on, after students get a little bit more acclimated to, what the train station looks like in Sevilla and kind of how Ubers work there. But on day one of travel, they absolutely do not need to take an Uber. They need to take a taxi or one of the other methods that I used earlier. Now, to the airport or to the train station, later in the program or at the end of the program, that is completely fine. Okay, receiving packages. Basically, you should not be sending your student any type of package or box, only letters and credit cards. If a credit card is lost or stolen, or a debit card, that is completely fine. But we do not recommend ever that you send packages to students from the United States, because it will likely get caught in customs and they will have to pay quite a bit of money. And a lot of times you have to go to the airport as a student, which is an unnecessary fee and hassle, and they have to pay for that to get it out of customs. And we will not be able to go with students to pick up and retrieve those packages. So if they have a language barrier, that could be, another reason to just avoid that altogether. There is Amazon in Spain. Now, it's not Amazon, the app, it's Amazon.es, which is for España, the same as the train station. And it is common for students to send things that they really need, or if they are sending a textbook to Sevilla through Amazon, that is fine, as long as it's coming from the Spanish Amazon. It is completely fine. If they accidentally book something or pay for something from the United States Amazon, then it will get flagged in customs as well. But students' faces light up like you would not believe when they see a handwritten letter from their parents or from whomever back home. So if you were not already thinking about sending a letter, you are welcome to and encouraged to. We will have those at the front desk for students to pick up as they arrive. It's pretty simple to send that. You can go to the post office, any post office pretty much, and ask for an international, like global stamp. It does cost a little bit more. I promise it is worth the price to get that to them. Yeah, I'm sure that that's all you need to know about receiving packages. If you need anything else, we can talk about it in the chat here. Let's talk about money and phones, and then Whitney, if it's okay, if we take a break and answer a few more questions, then that would be great. Okay, so money and phones. This is pretty much a carbon copy of what I just told your students. So there's not really a lot of new information here if your students have already filled you in, and I hope they have. But we'll talk about money first. So students must have a debit card. A lot of places are still very much a cash society, specifically if they're making purchases that are less than 5 or 10, even sometimes 15 euros, there could be a credit card limit or a debit card limit. And so they'd want to have cash for that. We recommend that students take out a larger amount of money to avoid paying heavy fees over and over and over. And they leave the bulk of that cash in their host family's house, which is completely safe and recommended to do. And they take from that, pile of money as they need to. That also is just safer, so that they are never at any point carrying around, loads of cash, all their ID, their passport. Not ideal. They are not going to need all of that in Sevilla. So for the most part, those things can stay in their personal dresser at their host family's house. Credit cards are optional. They are very widely used. I pretty much only use a credit card these days in Sevilla because it is, very safe to dispute transactions, that type of thing. It's very convenient to use, and they are widely accepted everywhere. American Express and Discover are not accepted in Spain. So Visa and MasterCard really are the only options there. I would make sure that it has a 0% foreign transaction fee. And if the credit card does not have a 0% foreign transaction fee, there's really no benefit to using the credit card over the debit card unless it has a better rate. Definitely contact your individual banks to get clarification of that type of information. Sometimes they don't know all of that at the bank. I went last week and my bank was like, honestly, we don't know. It's changing so much. I honestly don't know what the fee is, which was super unhelpful. So what I plan to do, and kind of what I do every year when I get to Sevilla, is I make one, one purchase on my actual debit card. And then I look to see if it charged me a fee or if my debit card is waiving international transaction fees as well, because that trend is becoming, more popular. So that's what I would recommend you do, or your student do. Make one purchase, double check to see if there was a fee associated with it, and move forward there to make, wise financial choices around those fees. Definitely encourage your student, or you can do it on their behalf, to notify the bank of travel plans. Most of the time you can do this in your mobile banking app, but if you belong to, a small town bank, which is awesome, you want to call them directly to put those travel dates as active so those cards can be used. I recommend that students definitely take 200 euros in cash, which you can order from your bank. You typically do have to have a bank account at the bank you're ordering them from, and it can take somewhere up to 2 weeks, but often it's much, much faster. But I would make those phone calls and get that money ordered sooner rather than later, so your students can have that for peace of mind, if nothing else. Like I said earlier, it's not ideal to get into a taxi with only a credit card, because they may not have their credit card working. They may be out of printer paper, which sounds crazy, but that actually happens. And so your student will be in a very unfortunate situation within an hour of landing in the country because they forgot to bring some cash. Another thing, I would recommend that you get that cash in 20s. You definitely don't want to get anything bigger than a 50. 100 is like unheard of really to use in Spain. And 20s is just really easy for students to keep up with, the change. It's very similar to the dollar. So that's what I'd recommend. Do not have your students bring US dollars. There are really no good places to transfer that money at an affordable rate. Yes, they can do that in the airport and lose, a very big chunk of that due to the fees. And if they want to do that, that's up to them. But either way, they need to have euros in some fashion. Okay, so let's switch over to phones. Students typically choose between an international phone plan and a SIM card there in Spain. The physical SIM card or the eSIM card are completely optional and available in Sevilla. And as I said earlier, on day one of orientation, that really is the first questions that students ask: where's the phone store? And conveniently located on the street of the center is a store. It's called Orange, or Orange, if you say it in Spanish. And so we will tell them exactly how to get there. It honestly is a straight shot. Students need to have their passport and a method of payment, and they will walk them through the entire thing. So the international plan is like, let's say you have that as part of your existing plan here. That is fine. Feedback, I've never personally done that, but feedback that I get from students is that it's not as good as the service there in country. And it's very affordable to get a SIM card in Spain. So I know that most students, even if they have T-Mobile or they have AT&T or Verizon, whoever they have, if it involves an international plan, a lot of times they realize that their data is very, very slow because it's bouncing off of other towers in Sevilla, and they may try that for a few days and then they end up getting a SIM card anyway. But nonetheless, it's up to your student. The SIM card is very easy to do, and I've told them that they just need to make sure they keep their US SIM card very safe, put it in a Ziploc bag, leave it at your host family's house to pop that back in, at the airport or on the plane as you're getting back to the United States. Your phone may need to be unlocked. I know for sure AT&T recently has required phones to be paid off in order to be unlocked. I do not work for any of these companies, so I would recommend you contact your provider and just clarify this information sooner rather than later, so you can make plans to get your student's phone unlocked if it is not already. Free Wi-Fi is not guaranteed in the Madrid airport or in any train stations in Spain. Sometimes there is, but sometimes there is not. It's more common that students will go in to buy like a water bottle or something at a cafe there in the train station. And at the bottom of that receipt, it's going to show the Wi-Fi password and they can hop on there. That's a backup plan. What I've really recommended to students, and I'll recommend, that you suggest the same, is that you consider purchasing what's called a travel pass. Most of the time it's called a travel pass, and it's a daily rate. It depends. I have Verizon, it's $10 a day. That's what I use. And I only select that travel pass on the first 2 to 3 days of my travel time, so that I definitely have service. As soon as I land, I can let my mom know that I made it, let my boss know I made it to Spain, and then I have peace of mind. I have cell phone service if I need it on the day of travel. And the whole next 2 days, when your students are going through, activity after activity of orientation, they may not have, enough time to go and get a phone plan on day one. But this travel pass kind of buys them a little bit of time, and then they can go get that phone card, on day 2 or day 3. We will double check with students that they have notified you, that they have notified their families of safe arrival before orientation begins. So I said earlier that we hand out packets first. We actually ask this question first, and then we hand out the packets. So we are double and triple checking that some students who did not have any cell phone service and they just forgot, and they don't realize that you've texted them 8 times because their phone's on airplane mode. We have great Wi-Fi in the center where we will be. The hotel has great Wi-Fi. Their host family will have great Wi-Fi. And so we will ensure that you are informed of their safe arrival, but we will have the students inform you, not us. Texting and phone calls real quick. So if you have an iPhone and your student has an iPhone, you can text and call just like normal. It sends through iMessage. You can have entire phone conversations for free, text messages for free by using FaceTime audio for a phone call or FaceTime to FaceTime. So it's up to you. But if you are going from maybe an Android to an iPhone or vice versa, or basically that's the other option, I would recommend you download the app that is called WhatsApp. And Whitney, could you drop that in the chat, how to spell that? Your students have been instructed to download this regardless of what kind of phone they have, because this is what they will use to communicate with their host family. And very important here, it must be downloaded while they're still in the United States, because it will send an SMS, and it has to go through like the data. You cannot receive an SMS through Wi-Fi. So it has to be downloaded here on this side before they go. You, unless you're traveling, can do it whenever you want. One last thing, if let's say a student has to make a phone call to a landline, that's a little trickier to do. They can purchase minutes on Skype, and we can tell them how to do that. If a student needs to talk to somebody at Texas Tech, they need to talk to financial aid or student business services or their advisor or the director of study abroad or whomever at Texas Tech, we have a landline that magically works from Sevilla, and it just calls straight to any office here at Texas Tech. And we do tell students of that, but you can remind them if any of you run into hurdles with SBS and it's just stressing your students out. We absolutely will work with them to give them the phone so that they can have all the time they need for that free phone call. Okay, Whitney, to you.
Yes, thank you, Lana. Lots of good information here. So we have several questions that have come in specifically on the topics of money and phones. But before we dive into the questions, and also to give you a minute to take a breath from sharing all this good information, we have a good tip that came in from Kim. So Kim, thank you very much for sharing this. So Kim wanted to let everybody know that if you have a Bank of America account, you can order currency, for example, euros, through the app, and you get a discount. And so Kim did this yesterday, and it came the next day and shipped directly to the bank. So good advice there if you happen to also be a Bank of America customer. Thank you again for sharing that.
Definitely.
So let's see, continuing on the currency and money topic, we have a question. So if your bank doesn't do currency conversion, can a student just plan to go to the ATM? Are there ATMs in the airport? How would that work?
Yes, all of those are typically available. They could also do the very last backup plan and take, $100 and switch it over. I cannot guarantee that they will, not be met with like a 30% fee, but if that's something that, they want to have and that's the only way to do it, that is fine. If they have this is kind of a strange suggestion. If they have like a friend that they're traveling with and they have euros, they could maybe Venmo them the difference to get some euros from another fellow traveler, maybe. And but it's possible for sure. And especially, let's say if your student cannot get euros, you can go to another bank. Possibly you just pay an extra fee and they may allow you to get that if you explain the situation to them. You could certainly try the Texas Tech Federal Credit Union, since they are associated with Texas Tech, and they may be more willing to accommodate your student as a Red Raider if your bank does not allow for that. But worst case is you could, if your student has a travel buddy, then they can just plan to pay on day one. That's like plan D, but you've got some options there.
So we have a couple questions about phones and SIM cards. So eSIM cards. I know this is a new topic. So student's phone has an eSIM card and not a physical SIM. How would this work for him?
It will work the same. So Spain rolled out eSIM compatibility about a month and a half ago. So that's confirmed, and they should have no problem whatsoever with the eSIM. However, they will still go into the phone store with their passport to get that set up.
Can you talk a little bit more about Wi-Fi expectations? So where can the students have access to Wi-Fi as part of their time in Sevilla?
Students will have Wi-Fi from the moment that they arrive at the hotel. There are many different Wi-Fi ports around the hotel, and they will be provided with an individual password during the check-in process. So they will definitely have Wi-Fi there. They will have complete Wi-Fi at the TTU Center, and they will also have great Wi-Fi at their host family's house. Other than that, it is kind of a hit or miss. Some coffee shops certainly offer it. They're usually not open, but you could, once you buy a coffee or something, they'll give you the password. That's an option. Most of the time, students have data as a backup plan, and specifically as they're using maps and different things, it's kind of tricky to have to constantly pop in if they're lost. It's better to have data, or it's better just to get lost and figure it out a little bit, and not just completely rely on your phone. But Wi-Fi will certainly be completely available at those 3 locations, as well as hotels for overnight excursions.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to add to that, I know sometimes students think, oh, well, I don't need to get an international phone plan, or I don't need to get a SIM card because I'm going to have Wi-Fi access. And that's actually something that we prohibit. We do want students to have a phone plan, whether it be through their provider here in the United States or by using a SIM card. And that's really for health and safety reasons. So we don't want your student to be in a situation where they're trying to call for help and they can't get on Wi-Fi to do that. So they absolutely have to have some way that they can be connected, specifically to the Seville Center, that is not just reliant on Wi-Fi. So keep that in mind in case your student is planning that route. We have a question about the SIM cards themselves. So is there a way to pre-purchase the SIM card and get it shipped to the US beforehand, or does it need to be done specifically in Seville?
So I've definitely done that for other countries. I've never done that for Spain because it's so easy to do it in Spain, and there will be time for them to do that. Now there are kiosks at most of these locations that they can switch into English. They'll still have help there from somebody that works there, but it's very easy to kind of navigate what to push to get the SIM card, it's rarely going to be more than 30 euros for the entire month. And it's possible if your students like watching videos in all their free time, that won't be enough money and they can go and like tap to reload. I've never, ever gone over my data in all these years. 25 to 30 euros covers everything. So I don't know the answer to your question. I personally wouldn't really do that, because it's just more margin of, you know, something going wrong, not getting there. Maybe they still have to go into a phone store when they arrive, and then that's kind of a pointless thing at that time.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about the use of WhatsApp? So we have a question here about WhatsApp and SIM cards. So if a student, for example, downloads WhatsApp when they're in the United States, and then they go to Spain and switch their SIM card to a Spanish SIM card, how does that, or do they still have access to WhatsApp to send messages?
Yes, it's magic. I don't really know exactly how that works, but it connects to, like, the verification code is sent to the US number through that SMS. And as soon as they have that verification code, then their WhatsApp is activated just as an app on their phone. And then it doesn't matter what the SIM card is. The number that is associated with your account is whatever number you set it up with at the beginning. There is never another verification process. It's a one-time thing. And so after that, students can use their normal WhatsApp and it will just show their American number, and they can use that in Wi-Fi or, you know, in data. If they want to wait and do that in Spain, they're still going to be able to get the message, but it's going to be a Spanish number. And if they're trying to call, you know, aunts, uncles, friends, whomever back in the States that doesn't have the same phone as they do, it's going to pop up this Spanish number and your phone may block it. And that's the real reason that we recommend that it's connected to their American number, so that anyone they send a text message to on WhatsApp, it's going to sync with their contacts, and they'll know, oh, that's Sylvia, or who you know, whatever your student's name is. So that's kind of how that works. But I would 100% recommend that you do it on the state side, and it'll work just fine while you're abroad.
Two more questions, and then we'll let you get back to the slides here. So with regard to the use of a credit or a debit card, we have someone who's written in that they primarily use a credit card rather than a debit card for safety reasons. Is the main reason for bringing a debit card because the credit card could have a large transaction fee, or is there another reason that they should be thinking about just using a debit card?
So I kind of talked about this a little earlier around the minimum purchase. So it's very common to have a 5, 10, or even 15 euro minimum purchase that is required for a credit card. And Spain is still, in some cases, a cash society. If you're going and getting, you know, a drink or a coffee or something, you know, that merienda, there is no way that you're going to be able to tap a credit card at one of these local cafes to put a $2 charge on. Like, that will be pretty insulting to them. And also they may just laugh and be like, no. And the student might not understand why they can't, because here we're very used to being able to tap, you know, for whatever it is that you need. So the debit card is required because they need to have access to cash. If their credit card is cut off or lost or stolen, they have no backup plan for payment. Some places you can use your phone to tap like you can here, but a lot of places are cash only still. So you need to be able to have a variety of ways to pay. And just as you do here, you know, some places are now cash only, some places are no cash. You know, things are kind of changing even here. And it's going to be most ideal for your student if they have more than one method of payment, but the debit card is like, they're trustworthy. Definitely, they can always get cash out and be able to spend with that.
Mm-hmm. Another question related to phones, and then we have one question that might lead us on to another topic. So we've heard that there is Vodafone service in addition to Orange. Does the Seville Center recommend one or the other over the other?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is no, we do not. I personally use Vodafone, do not know why, but Orange, I just always have. Orange is super close to the center. And for that reason, we can give them like very trustworthy directions. Walk this way for 3 minutes and you'll see a bright orange store. If your student waits until they get to their host family and their host family says, oh, do you have a SIM card? Or if the student asks the family, you know, where can I get a SIM card? There could very well be a Vodafone much closer to the host family's house than an Orange store, and that's completely fine. Either of them are going to be great, and I would definitely say they offer very competitive prices. So either is just fine.
And then a final question for right now that is a change of topic a little bit, but what is the voltage in Spain? Will our chargers work, or will students need to buy a separate converter?
So I'm laughing because all of this is just wired into my brain, but the Spanish voltage is much higher. So in the United States, we're on a 110 voltage. In Spain, we're on a 220. And so we require basically that students do not bring curling irons, blow dryers, anything with a heating element whatsoever. We have a student who last week asked about a heating pad for like medical purposes. Anything that has a heating element in it is like a no-go, because it will fry your hair, or, you know, it will not be a good situation. But for phone chargers, computers, those types of things, camera batteries, any of that, a simple adapter is fine. I don't have a picture here of this. I showed a huge picture of it to the students at Seville night, and basically we require that students have at least one purchase before they travel. They're very easy to find, you know, online, on Amazon, in any travel section. You can definitely just double check that it says Southwestern Europe, because those are all the same, even if it doesn't say Spain specifically, though you can often find that in the reviews. But students need to have at least one for their phones and computers during the time of travel. They could be, you know, arriving in Madrid to have quite an extensive layover or a delay, or somewhere else in Europe and have a delay. They need to be able to charge their devices, as well as at the orientation hotel. Students need to be able to charge their devices, you know, on day one to stay in contact with you back home and us if we, you know, need anything. But they will learn at orientation. There's a little shop, truly, right around the corner from the center, 30 seconds walking, and they can pick up as many additional adapters as they would like to for about €1, €2, something like this. What is not necessarily needed is a converter, because we just tell students, do not bring anything that needs to be like converted over. Host families have those, like, you know, tools and things for your hair that you may need. If there's a specific thing that your student, you know, needs to make their time more comfortable, that requires that, you could certainly send us an email and we could look into that for you. But, and just general rule of thumb is adapters only, no converters. Okay. Student insurance. This information has been very consistent and provided since the very first, you know, time that your students found out about this. So nothing has really changed here, but just so you are aware of how this process really works. Students have two types of insurance while they are in Spain, and we will be able to guide them through the entire process if they do get sick while they're in Spain. So the health insurance company that we primarily use is called Sanitas, and this is the individual card that students are going to receive on day one. We already have purchased their policies, so it is possible that students are starting to get emails or text messages from Sanita saying, hey, set up your account. That is not necessary. We will walk them through on day one of orientation how to download the Sanitas app if they want, and how they can get their account information set up. They also do not have to have that. They can just use the policy card that we will tell them to not only take a picture of, but also keep it with them at all times should they run into, you know, any unexpected emergencies. But insurance coverage is provided between the start and finish dates of the program. If your student is planning to arrive early, or if your student is planning to stay afterwards for personal travel, they should make their own international insurance coverage plans. Not necessarily through Sanitas. I don't even know if you can do that from the United States, but you can certainly seek out international insurance coverage plans, through Google on the American side. The travel policies through your airlines are not necessarily what you're looking for. That's a very different thing. That's not going to typically include health insurance. But the health insurance does travel with students on all of excursions and also to any European location. So if they're going to fly to, Scotland, how dreamy, on a weekend, their insurance is covered while they're in Scotland or anywhere else that they travel to. It's actually worldwide. So if a student, gets real crazy and goes even further than Europe for some odd reason, it's going to be covered through this insurance. So rest assured, they'll be able to use that American number on the back. And we have an additional umbrella company for health insurance as well as a backup plan. So your student has wonderful coverage while they are in Spain. I will say that through Sanitas, if a student gets sick while they're, at the TTU Center in Sevilla, in Seville, at their host family, wherever, the protocol is if it's not life-threatening, if it's not an emergency, then they need to contact us. We tell them this at orientation, but just so you're aware as well, they contact us. They either come to their point of contact, whoever that is associated with their individual group that they'll find out about soon, or they can just email the director, the assistant director. They'll get to know all of us. There's only about 5 of us who are the go-to people for the students. So they will have our information, and we will schedule that appointment for them on their behalf. And we will either meet them at the center to walk together, or if they're feeling, super unwell, we will go with them in a taxi, maybe pick them up at their host family's house and go with them, or we will give them the address and they will go from their host family's house to the Sanitas clinic. And we will be there with them the entire time to translate. And then we will also work with them to help them get their prescriptions, if needed, immediately following the appointment. I saw a question pop up, but then it went away. I know there was another question. Oh, the question was about billing, and Whitney, maybe you've already answered this. I'm sorry, but yes, this price is included in the price of the program. You need to make no steps whatsoever for either of the travel policies. I mean, the health insurance policies, it is already done, and we have those physical cards already waiting in Sevilla. Okay, medications. I've received a lot of questions about medications from parents in the last 2 weeks. So don't overthink this and don't feel like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about medications. It's completely fine. And everything can be, figured out in Sevilla if a issue arises. But any medication that your student will need, like a prescription, it must be packed in the carry-on, and it needs to be in the original prescription bottle with your student's name on it. So don't, mix prescriptions or anything like that. Really, you need to have the prescriptions before you come to Sevilla. I would certainly be having those conversations with my doctor to get an extension, to get, extra prescriptions for the duration of the program. But if that is absolutely not possible, then there is a way to get a prescription filled while in Sevilla. But they must bring 2 things. One, the prescription bottle or the label that came off of the original prescription. And they also need to have a letter from the doctor, and it needs to have like a letterhead, needs to have the, diagnosis, what they're prescribed. It needs to have like a stamp of authentication to show that it's, a legit clinic or, doctor's office. that kind of thing, just something that you can, provide. And certain medications, we will, have to have all of that. So it's best if you are planning to have a prescription filled in Seville, that you have both of those things, the original prescription bottle with their name clearly identified on the box, bottle, whatever it is. And if it's a refrigerated type of medication, they need to have photos of that prescription, and that will suffice, in addition to the letter. Over-the-counter medicines can easily be found in Spain, so there's no need to bring, a load of Tylenol or a load of Benadryl, anything like that. It is recommended to bring a little bit of both of those if you want, just because you don't really know what allergies are in Seville. Seville is actually in full bloom right now, and there are different flowers and trees blooming than what we have here. And so a lot of students find that they have allergies the first, couple of days, couple of weeks. So you can bring some of that, but if they forget, we can get it in Seville. And please note that prescriptions may be an out-of-pocket expense. While they are often very affordable, insurance is not necessarily going to cover that expense for your student if they need that. Okay, how do excursions work? So excursions are completely mandatory. Often, if a student misses an excursion, they will be counted as an absent for their coursework. That has nothing to do with study abroad. That is going to be set by the faculty leader. It'll be in the syllabus, but excursions are mandatory. The cost of the excursions are included in the program. They are. So that includes transportation, hotel stays, breakfasts. It includes typically a packed lunch from our rock star host moms. Heaven forbid they go without, a packed lunch. And it will also include any type of entrance tickets that they may need for hotels, churches, a garden. If we're taking them to a garden that requires payment, all of that is included. Extra spending money is not necessary, but it is definitely suggested that they have some spending money for excursions, because students will have free time on every excursion to grab food, to grab ice cream, coffee, souvenirs. They'll typically have 2 to 3 hours of free time everywhere that we go before we get back on the train or the bus to return to Sevilla. And transportation for excursions, like I said, is usually on a chartered bus or on a train, and we coordinate all of that. We have an app that we work with students. It's called Remind, and students are aware of this. They will receive reminders about the app Remind the week prior to their departure date to Sevilla, to download that, because that's how we communicate with students in real time regarding changes and different things that could happen around excursions, just reminders of where the meeting point is, that kind of thing. Another reason why, as Whitney mentioned earlier, students absolutely need to have cell phone service while they're there, so that they can get those updates in real time if any details are changing, regarding trains or buses. There are, at sometimes we'll take a local bus if we're going from to an industry visit on the other side of Sevilla, and there's a city bus. We'll go together as a group, probably not for our engineering or Spanish group, because those are quite large programs, but any other program that's like 15 or less, it's easy to hop on the bus, and but we'll be with them if we choose to do that. Are families welcome to join? And the answer is no. So students are on a very rigorous schedule throughout the summer term, and families cannot join excursions during the summer. I've received a couple of calls this week actually saying, hey, we heard there's a family week. Family week is an event that is specific to the spring or the fall semester, so our long semester programs. Family week is not an option during the busy summer months, unfortunately. However, you are welcome to visit your student while they are abroad, but it is best if you go at the beginning or if you come and visit them at the end, as they cannot miss any required activities, and it's not ideal for students to be missing out on all that their program offers, because they have to be, with their families. They feel obligated to be in both places. So please, if you're planning to join, you are welcome to come. Seville's a gorgeous city, but plan those at the beginning or at the end. Okay, in case of emergency, number one, it depends on the type of emergency, but if it's like you have a family emergency and you're trying to get in touch with your student, number one, try to contact your student. If there's an emergency going on, in Spain that you may have heard of, number one is to contact your student to see if they are already aware of that and they could put you at ease about what's going on. But if you have reason to believe that maybe your student in Spain is having or experiencing an emergency, they've shared something with you, or you have their location turned on or something like that. If there is something you find emergent, then the best thing to do is to call the Texas Tech Police Department, because they are available 24/7. And their step one is to gather the information, and then immediately they are going to notify our team. So Whitney Longnecker will receive that phone call any time of day or night from the police department, and then she will immediately relay that information to our director in Sevilla, regardless of the time of day or night. But it is best to channel that information through the Texas Tech Police Department. So please keep that information handy. Then feel free to follow up with the TTU Study Abroad main office, maybe the next day or the same day if we're still in business hours. You can also always send an email if that's something that needs to be done. I'll share emergency emails here in just a little bit. But if your student's flight, let's say it's canceled or delayed on the day of travel, please encourage them not to stress out, even if you've never traveled, before, and this is, your first time for your student to travel by themselves or just in general. It is completely okay if they, have a delayed flight or if it's canceled. 9 times out of 10, that's out of the control of students. Our advice is to get to airports everywhere, get there early, and set your eyes on the actual gate that you're going to be departing from, and keep your phone turned on, not on airplane mode while you're in the airport, so that students can receive, if the gate changes or something like that. But if they do have a delay, step one is to talk to the airline. They're in person, go to a kiosk, get that resolved, get on the next flight, and then they can email me and John.Dean, or at that time, they'll already have their contact person that they go to for everything that's in charge of their program. They'll receive that email and have it bookmarked, and that's who they can reach out to as well. But they just want to make sure to put at least 2 people, on that email, and so we can be expecting them the following day. If they're going to arrive just a couple of days, a couple of hours late, that's okay. We're going to hold their dinner for them. We'll make sure that they still get a warm dinner, and be able to sleep and get on with the rest of orientation. We'll catch them up the following day or in a couple of days of what they missed of the orientation content. But if they're coming an entire day or 2 later, then they will need to go straight to their host family's house, and we will provide that information in a personalized email to your student after they've notified us, hey, unfortunately, I'm going to be a whole day late. What do I do? We will give them step-by-step instructions, name, address, phone number, everything that they could need. And then the backup plan is, of course, they can come straight to the center if for some reason they need to do that. It's also a great idea if you can have your students email the faculty leader of the program, regardless of what program they're on. That would be a great third person to notify, especially if their delayed arrival is going to impact their class time. Okay, questions. We are so close to the end here, y'all. Just hang on a little bit longer. I think what we'll do, Whitney, is just let me go through these next couple of slides, and then we'll open up the questions and you can complete those. Okay, so here is pretty much everyone's contact information that you could need. Myself, Adriana, Whitney, we're here in this meeting. Whitney, again, is the director, and you're more than welcome to email her directly if any emergencies come up. Dr. Sarah Pink and Dr. Jonathan Dean are the Seville on-site directors and assistant directors, and they also can be reached via email as well. And then of course, there I am at the top. If you have, most of you have my email addresses by now, but if you don't, then this is the best place to reach me. And this is my favorite slide. Not because it's the last slide, but because at Texas Tech, every single department is going to tell you, follow us on social media, but you really should follow Study Abroad on social media, because we are going to be showcasing all of the great experiences that your students are going to be living this summer while we're all here working. And so please consider following us so that you can see some shout outs and see the excursions in the day-to-day life of what students in Seville and Red Raiders abroad all over the world, what they're getting up to this summer. And that's it. I'll leave that up as we answer questions.
Thank you, Lana, for all of that wonderful and really great information. We've had a lot of really good discussion in the Q&A and many good questions asked. So we are so thankful for you all in being part of this session tonight, and we hope that this information is useful. So this is the last call for questions. We just have a couple that are outstanding that we would be happy to discuss. But if there's anything else that you are thinking about, a topic maybe that you would like a little bit more information about, now is the time. So go ahead and pop that question into the Q&A and we can have Lana respond to those. One thing also that I do want to share, I'm going to put a poll up on the screen because we would love to also get some information from you. So like I was saying, I hope that this has been really informative and helpful, but we also want to make sure that we're doing a good job in sharing information that is useful to you. And so I'm going to put a poll up on the screen to end our session today, and we would appreciate your feedback in responding to that poll so that way we can make sessions like these more impactful for future groups of students and parents. So as we're responding to the last questions here, please take some time to help us out as well. So a question that came in is regarding health and safety. So are there certain cities or perhaps countries that you all discuss as part of the orientation in Seville that students should avoid if they're planning travels around Europe?
That's a great question. There's not really a blanket answer to address that, but instead, when we suggest students, you should go to Barcelona because it's beautiful and it's there. It's very close. You can take a train. But we tell them that pickpocketing, for example, is incredibly high in larger cities compared to in Seville. Does pickpocketing still happen in Seville? Absolutely it does, but not on the same caliber as these large cities such as London, Berlin, Paris, Barcelona, wherever they're trying to go. So we do not discourage students to travel to any particular locations other than Morocco. We do discourage travel to Morocco, but for the most part, students are sticking inside Europe. And instead of discouraging them to go to certain places, we try to equip them with tips and tricks of how to stay safe while they are in those locations. And if possible, to just have a travel buddy that you stick with at all times while they are, in their free weekends.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. There's a follow-up question about medications. So are there any medications that you are aware of that are illegal to take into Spain? And how should a student carry medications as well as any other vitamins or supplements that they may take to Spain with them?
So I would not be concerned with illegal medications as long as it is a prescription. If your student is trying to take medicine that they got from another person, that is illegal to do. You need to have prescription that is, with your name on it, that is prescribed to you. Like, are they going to sit there and weed through your students like pills? I hope not. But I mean, could they be subject to a search? Yeah, definitely they could be. So it's wise to have, just if it's a prescription, it's okay to take. And that letter, if they do get weird questions, they can certainly, have that have that letter there on hand. I would recommend that it is printed if they have that type of letter with them for travel versus just in their email to pull up, because it's going to be easier to get that like real fast if on the off chance that they will need that. Over-the-counter meds, vitamins, I don't think they have to be in original containers. They're pretty recognizable. It's not a bad idea if the student has, the space to do that. I take very small bottles of anything I need. They're very lightweight, so they don't really, bog down your packing too much. Vitamins, kind of the same thing. They're not going to have their stuff gone through to that caliber, most likely. I've never personally heard of that. But it certainly could happen. So, I mean, worst case scenario, students could, have to let go of something if they're taking like a liquid vitamin or something like that, and it's above the allowed travel amount, which is like 100 milliliters, I believe, then something like that could certainly get flagged.
We've had a couple questions come in throughout the session that ask about where the recording for today's session will be available. So that's something that we will send out by email to everybody who has registered for the session today. And it will be up on our YouTube channel for the Texas Tech Study Abroad YouTube. So we will share that shortly, so that way you can reference back to that and any of the information that you have here today. The final question that we have in our Q&A is one that I will respond to. So the question is there any world situation that would cause a cancellation of the program before or during? So this is a difficult question to answer, because as we have all just very recently experienced, there are unpredictable scenarios that occur and that we have seen occur that make it difficult to be able to say that, this certain thing will happen, this certain thing will happen, this thing will happen. Of course, we all were looking for that crystal ball during the thick of COVID, but unfortunately, I couldn't find my crystal ball. Evidently, you all couldn't either. And so we just didn't quite know what was going to happen in those types of situations. Now, it is our goal to ensure that students have safe and productive international experiences. And, myself, Adriana, Lana, we didn't get into this field of study abroad to have to tell students, no, you cannot participate in an experience. So we want to be able to continue operating these programs and offering these experiences to students, but we also recognize that we need to do so in a safe environment. We do have emergency response plans that we will kick into action should there be some type of scenario that directly impacts the Seville Center or really any of our students in any of the locations that they might be studying in. We're not afraid to make those tough decisions about study abroad programs. And if we do have to make those decisions, we're also thinking about alternatives. So for example, maybe the location of Seville specifically is no longer safe, but there's another location nearby that would be a better solution for the students. Those are the kind of contingency plans that we are working on all the time. And it's a big part of my job as the director of our office to have those plans in place, but also enact them as we need to. And I'll just, as a final example, and hopefully something that will help kind of drive this point home, is that Texas Tech really does care about the safety and security of our students. And we want to make sure, as I said, that this is a safe and healthy experience for students. So it's the top of mind, not just for the study abroad office, but also the administrators here on campus. And I think an example of that is during COVID, when COVID reared its ugly head for the first time in March of 2020, we had over 100 students who were studying abroad all around the world during that spring semester. And really within a few days' time, we recalled all of those students back home. We asked them to return, and also we monitored their health for the following 2 weeks after their arrival back home, because at the time there was still a lot of questions about COVID and what the health implications were. And so we wanted to make sure that our students were healthy and safe. And so that included calling and talking talking to each of those 100 students every couple days to make sure that they were doing well and had also had academic alternatives to finish their semester successfully. So I'm really proud of our COVID response. And again, I share that as an example to hopefully help assure you that this is something that we take very seriously, and that we want your students to be in good hands as they participate on their study abroad programs in Sevilla or wherever they may be in the world. There's one final question that I think might be useful to address that kind of is on this topic. So Lana, is there a U.S. consulate in Seville that folks might need to know about?
There is not. So any student that has a issue with their passport or something like that, they will actually go to the Madrid office. I mean, technically, I don't know the answer to that question. If there was like a private situation that you're dealing with and you need consular support, those types of services probably are available in Seville, but anything that's relating to passports, anything like that, they would go straight to the US Embassy that is in Madrid. That is rare. It definitely happens from time to time that students lose their passport, but we will give them step-by-step instructions of what to expect when they go to the consulate and how long that process is going to take. And sometimes faculty even go with the student if that happens. It just kind of depends on the situation. This Costco question has like me cracking up because yes, there's a Costco. No, you can't really get to it. It is very far away. Like if you want to spend $30 to take an Uber, you can. But honestly, like no student needs to be bringing anything bigger than like, what fits in their backpack into their host family's house. Certainly nothing that's like bulk size, but just because it's a fun thing to do. I think students do go to Costco, but it's hard to get there. You got to take multiple buses that connect to get there. You'd want to take an Uber or a taxi. If it is like top 10 things to check off the list in Seville, that's going to be the better way to go.
Well, thank you all so much for your good questions and for sticking with us. We're glad that this session was informative and that we were able to speak directly to you to answer the questions as you prepare your students for their time in Sevilla. Thank you so much to Lana for sharing all of this really good information. And I know that she is looking forward to working with your students directly in Seville very soon. So if you do have any follow-up questions or maybe something that you think of later, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You've received all of our contact information, so please feel free to make use of that as you need. And as I mentioned previously, we will share this recording so that way you can reference that as well. Thank you all very much for being here this evening. And with that, we will close the session. We appreciate you being here and have a good evening. Thank you all.
Bye.